Hi everyone, I'm Dr.Animaction. Welcome to what I'm going to do my best to try and make the full year video for 1997. My schedule got a little backed up this week, again, so I'll probably try to put out back-to-back videos today and tomorrow, with tomorrow being a deep dive into Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light. It also looks like the animated 80s and film is winning the poll for alternating video this week, which, if it's the final winner, will cover made-for-TV movies and specials as well as any direct-to-video releases. There's still a couple of days to vote though, so if you want to see something else, you can go do so. Lastly, I just want to thank everyone for how great a place you're making the Discord server, as that's the community I'd envisioned from the very beginning. Enough of that though, let's get into this new year.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
In 1996, we saw a lot of new releases, with a huge portion of them being modern versions of classic properties, originating from sources as varied as literature, to comic books, to older cartoons. We got a new batch of adaptations from movies and video games to continue those trends. We also continued the growth trend for edutainment releases, as well as straight-up comedies. We also saw anime sputter a little after the release of a couple of major series the previous year. As we all know, anime was coming to America in a big way, but it hadn't found its niche on TV just yet. Action, though, seems to have done so again, with several series that fit in that category having come out. So let's see what continues, what improves, and what fades away here in 1997. As usual, we'll start off by seeing what was still hanging around from years gone by. Well, as I said last episode, the 80s had officially faded into memory, so we have no shows from that decade hanging on this year. Bobby's World was the only survivor from 1990, with Rugrats carrying the year for 1991. 92 was sticking around with a quartet of shows, including Donald's Quack Attack, Eek the Cat, X-Men the Animated Series, and Toonheads. There were several more than that from 93 as well, with Beavis and Butthead, The Terrible Thunder Lizards, Animaniacs, Madeline, Tales from the Crypt Keeper, VeggieTales, The New Adventures of Gigantor, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but this year as the Power Rangers Turbo. Here's a look at the 11 remainders from 1994, with a few of that year's best still on the air. 1995 was still going strong too, with 20 from its lineup still around. And finally, a little over 73% of the shows from 1996 ran into the new year, which is a slight decrease in that rate from the previous couple of years. The 29 of those are pictured here, and also include the new Disney version of Doug, which I forgot. Not everything had that kind of fortitude though, so let's see what fell off. Some of the shows on this list sting, but it is what it is. Starting with 1990, we lost Captain Planet and the Planeteers, Ren and Stimpy from 91, and Biker Mice from Mars, The Itsy Bitsy Spider, and Rocko's Modern Life from 1993. 11 different series from 1994 fell by the wayside this year, with Creepy Crawlers, Dino Babies, Fantastic Four, The Head, Highlander the Animated Series, Iron Man, Mega Man, Mutant League, Phantom 2040, The Tick, and the not-pictured VR Troopers making up that list. From 1995, there were 11 casualties as well, including Action Man, The Adventures of Hyperman, Dumb and Dumber, Earthworm Jim, Clutter, Princess Guinevere and the Jewel Riders, The Savage Dragon, Sky Surfer Strike Force, Tenko and the Guardians of Magic, What a Mess, and Gadget Boy and Heather, though we'll actually see them again this year. And lastly was the 27% attrition from 1996, comprised of the Bureau of Alien Detectors, Cave Kids, Little Mouse on the Prairie, Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm, Project Geeker, Quack Pack, Richie Rich, Siegfried and Roy, Masters of the Impossible, Vortec Undercover Conversion Squad, the YY Family, and Wing Commander Academy. Hopefully 1997 steps up to fill some of those gaps. Although slightly less impressive than what we'd seen in the past couple of years, this one still brought us 38 new series. It's a collection of different genres from different sources that caters to different age groups in a way that looks notably varied from the past as well. We'll have to see how things pan out over the rest of the decade, but at first glance, it's quite a noticeable shift, so it may be the start of something. Or it may not. That's entirely possible too. We've had a couple of similar shifts in the past, so who's to say? Either way, let's get into it and we'll just see what happens as things unfold. I feel pretty good here on the 17th video of these series that the structure and format are pretty decent, so we'll stick with looking at new shows from classic material first. Starting off the category, we already have my first cheat of the video, as it's a series that's not based on any classic source, but rather the creator of several classic sources. The Wacky World of Tex Avery ran in syndication for a single 65-episode season and was very much a throwback to previous eras of cartoons. Using the short segment format that Looney Tunes and its ilk had been leveraging for more than half a century, the show was populated by more than half a dozen brand new characters done both visually and thematically in Avery's style. While the Tex Avery show was still running actual work from the creator on Cartoon Network, this series came to us from Deke, who didn't have any rights or licenses to those. Hence, new characters and stories in a familiar style, with voice actor Billy West bringing to life the animated avatar of Avery himself. Next for the year, we turn to the Disney Channel for yet another series running their older serials and shorts with the Ink and Paint Club. There's really nothing else to say about this one, and we've covered a hefty handful of shows that have done the same thing on the same channel a few times throughout the series, so we'll just move on. Instead, we'll head up to the Great White North with a series that presented shorts and vignettes created in that country throughout the history of animation. O Canada was produced with the support of the National Film Board of Canada and contained various entries from its archives. Mostly focusing on more mature and adult animation, the series ran during some late night and early morning slots on Cartoon Network, so I wouldn't be shocked if many of you, like me, hadn't heard of it. Enough pulling material out of the history of animation though, and instead let's pull material from the history of the real world, specifically the Old West. A Legend of Calamity Jane was a 13-episode series on Kids WB that was based on the famous real-life figure of Martha Calamity Jane Canary. The real-life person was famously known even in her own time as a sharpshooter and daredevil, but also had a reputation as being compassionate and charitable. In the animated series, although much of the character's backstory differs from the historical inspiration, she does fight on the side of good against bandits and thieves while also standing up for native peoples against corruption and efforts to manipulate them. She's also supported throughout the series by other representations of real-life people of the era, both good and bad, with stories that are loosely based on real events. Finally, in this blissfully short category, especially as compared to 95 and 6, we remain in the West with the New Adventures of Zorro. I'd summarize this show, but it's classical Zorro, which is a story I imagine everyone is fairly familiar with. It follows Don Diego de la Vega as he protects the people of northern Mexico and southern California as the masked vigilante Zorro. It's very traditional for the character in its storytelling, but it does incorporate some more fantastical aspects in the form of both steampunk gadgets and magic. It ran for 26 episodes across 2 seasons in syndication. While the decreased volume in this category was the first notable change for the year, but let's keep going and see what else we find. The year brought us a pair of shows that came from the world of movies as well. Kind of, at least. The first of these was based on the 1961 Disney film of the same name, with 101 Dalmatians the series. This show ran for 65 episodes across 2 seasons, the first of which was on ABC before moving to syndication as part of the Disney Afternoon. Unlike the movie, it primarily followed a small group of the titular 101 Dalmatians. This group, consisting of Lucky, Cadpig, and Rolly, and accompanied by their chicken friend Spot, got up to various antics on the Dearly farm and had to deal with Cruella de Vil as she attempts to steal the farm away. The series also boasted a few big names doing most of the heavy lifting, with Pamela Adlon, Kath Soucie, and Tara Strong as the core characters. Our next series in this category is a modern take and a completely new version of the concept from the seminal 1984 movie Ghostbusters, in the form of Extreme Ghostbusters. The series spun off of the real Ghostbusters cartoon for a single 40-episode season as part of the Bobot Kids block. In it, the founding Ghostbuster Egon Spengler has been living in the firehouse and maintaining the original containment unit, with Slimer keeping him company, though supernatural activity has declined to the point where the other members of the team have gone their separate ways. When ghosts and ghouls start to reappear, though, Egon recruits a new team as the modern reincarnation of the Ghostbusters, and with the help of Janine Melnitz, mentors them through their efforts to clean up New York. Closing out this category, we have a series that was based on a movie that was based on a comic, but of which the movie is far better known. Men in Black the series takes place in the same universe as the movies, but in a parallel timeline which puts it out of continuity with those, allowing the creators to tell their own stories. In the series, Agent K never retired, Jay is still a rookie, and Linda Fiorentino's Elle is a senior MIB staff member. For the most part, the show takes an alien of the episode approach, though there are a few small threads that stretch throughout. It's a fun series with a great art design and ran for 53 episodes over 4 seasons. Not necessarily as many of these as we'd had previously, but probably not a sufficient enough change to throw off the trend. Does that hold true for video games as well, since we also got a pair of those this year? First was a series that was supposed to coincide with the release of a game by the same name, but actually beat it to market. Not only that, but Nightmare Ned only ended up running for 12 episodes on ABC, ending its time on the air in July of this year, a full 5 months before the game even saw the light of day. The short run was mostly because there was a lot of conflict during its production between the creator of the series and game and the cartoon's directors. Not only that, but it was a surprisingly dark show that received quite a bit of criticism about its borderline disturbing content, which was especially surprising as it was produced by Disney. Of course, that also means it's one that's never seen a re-release and Disney doesn't like to talk about, so it most likely never will. The second series to go over in this category is almost the polar opposite of that, though, being essentially purely comedic and nonsensical. And before you head to the comments, I'll just say that I know The Adventures of Sam and Max Freelance Police is originally based on a 1987 comic book from creator Steve Purcell, but I'd be willing to bet heavily in favor of most people knowing them from the 1993 LucasArts point-and-click adventure game, Sam and Max Hit the Road. Regardless of how people were familiar with them, though, this 13-episode Fox Kids series followed the detective noir dog and his hyperactive, psychotic, rabbit-thingy partner as they take on assignments doled out by the mysterious commissioner. As I said, the series is also very strange and nonsensical, much like the source material, and sees the pair travel to the moon, other dimensions, and even across time, although it did tone down some of Max's more violent and destructive tendencies. Moving right along, we get a trio of educational series to learn from in this batch of new shows. The first of these isn't technically a whole new show, but rather a second season continuation of a 1995 series following a year-long hiatus. Gadget Boy's Adventures in History sees the title's young detective moved over to join his adult self on the History Channel, and follows him and his crew as they pursue the evil Spydra throughout time to stop her from changing history. Even though the series got a name change and a new network, though, it continued to use the same intro and was structurally very similar. It ran for 26 episodes and was the last time Don Adams voiced the character, along with the concurrently running Inspector Gadget's field trip. Next up for our learning enjoyment came the series Channel Umpty 3, which aired for 13 episodes on Kids WB. The show follows a group of characters called the Umpties, as they drive around in a van broadcasting a pirate TV station on which they'd teach their lessons about appreciating the world in its many splendors. They're pursued throughout the series by the Frumps, a somewhat evil businessman and his sidekicks, who wants to put a stop to the message the Umpties are sending. The show is notable for using several pop culture references and including stock footage from a wide assortment of movies and TV shows over its run. Closing out this category, we have a series called Science Court, which ran Saturday mornings as part of ABC's Disney block of the time for 29 episodes over 3 seasons. This is not a show I ever watched. Well, to be honest, all of them in this category fit that description, but this is one I never will either, as it's in squiggle vision, though a less nauseating version of it than Dr. Katz. The show is a comedic take on science set in a courtroom where a pair of lawyers would argue a case whose outcome depended on some scientific principle or another. The intelligent and patient lawyer Allison Kremple would present those principles in an easy-to-understand manner, while her ignorant slimeball of an opponent, Doug Savage, argued against her. The show also featured the voices of comedian Paula Poundstone as the judge and H. John Benjamin as the professor who appeared as Allison's expert testimony. Speaking of comedic takes on shows, we got a pretty substantial number this year for which that was the sole inspiration. First among these was the spoof series Walter Melon. No, not the character from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which provided sarcastic takes on other pop culture properties of all shapes and sizes. The series followed main character Walter and his sidekick/assistant Bitterbug as they traveled across time, replacing various iconic characters as heroes for hire. The series ran for 52 episodes, each containing 2 segments, over 2 seasons on Fox Family, with the second season shifting focus to real-life historical figures rather than characters. The next series we have appeared on Nickelodeon, where it aired for 52 episodes, which were also 2 segments each, over 4 seasons. The Angry Beavers follows a pair of beavers named Norb and Dag, a couple of brothers who have newly moved out of their parents' house to live on their own. The show was created by artist Mitch Schauer, who'd previously worked on other Nick series like Rocko's Modern Life and Hey Arnold, and who somewhat famously used this series to push the limits of what they could get away with on the network. The series creators even went so far as to make a final episode that openly criticized the network and some of their censorship and supervision of the series, but the episode unsurprisingly never saw release and wasn't even fully completed. For the remainder of this category, though, we turned to a network that had far looser standards for content and much more creator-friendly production guidelines, Cartoon Network. They released a trio of shows this year that each in their own ways pushed all of the limits of what was acceptable, or in some cases in good taste, for that era of television. The first of these was a new cartoon from creator David Feiss called Cow and Chicken, which followed the antics of the anthropomorphic cow and chicken offspring of a pair of human parents and heavily employs gross-out humor in its stories. Almost every episode contains something disgusting or violently disgusting. Not only that, but the show also included a naked, obvious analog of the devil called the Red Guy, who would often barter with the kids or manipulate their situation in some way. And all three of these main characters were voiced by a single actor, Charlie Adler. I was never much of a fan, but apparently there were plenty of other people who were, as it ran for 4 seasons and a total of 52 episodes. Each of these episodes was actually an hour long and contained 2 15-minute segments of Cow and Chicken, as well as one segment of the next show in this category, I Am Weasel. This series takes place in the same universe as Cow and Chicken, even featuring the Red Guy as a significant character. The series followed the brilliant, talented, and widely beloved hero I.M. Weasel, voiced by Commander Worf, across various adventures, and his jealous rival I.R. Baboon, who constantly tries and fails to prove his superiority. Oddly enough, the show actually had something significant to say about society, as over its run it quietly shifted more and more attention to Baboon as a nod to the dumbing down of the people in the show, eventually ending with his character as the main star, which I tend to believe was a subversive statement about the world in general. Oddly enough, we'll talk a little more about that later. Lastly in this category, though, is this year's final new cartoon, Johnny Bravo, created by Van Partible. The show followed the Elvis Presley, James Dean wannabe man-child as he tries to pick up women. The main character is a completely self-absorbed idiot with pretty much no moral compass, who is easily controlled by his mother, easily manipulated by his preteen neighbor, and constantly and violently rejected by the women he harasses. If the show were set in modern times, it would have had a very short run, as Johnny probably would have ended up in jail in the first episode. He's also quite often joined by some celebrity or another in his pop culture-filled adventures, and even has several guest appearances from classic Hanna-Barbera characters throughout. The show lasted for 65 episodes over 4 seasons. As a new category, at least for the US series, as I've had it in the Japan series since the beginning, I've decided to add Slice of Life. Sure, several of the shows I've already covered in this video and others could fit here, but we're starting to see more and more that combine comedy and social commentary in contemporary real-world settings, so I figured it was time to differentiate. The first series I'm putting here is from Disney and ran as part of the One Saturday Morning block on ABC for 5 seasons and 65 episodes. It's called Pepper Ann and was created by cartoonist Sue Rose, who was also responsible for the Kablam spin-off series Angela Anaconda, which made it the first Disney animated series created by a woman. Originally starting life as a comic strip in YM Magazine, the show follows the daily life of middle school-age title character, Pepper Ann, as she deals with typical age-appropriate situations. The series also features Don Adams in his final TV role as Pepper's principal. My next entry in this category for the year comes from Disney as well, with their other middle school series Recess. Or, I guess since it follows a cast of 4th graders, it's more of an elementary school series. It follows a main cast of 6 kids as they navigate the social complexities of playground life as an analog of society at large. It's actually a pretty well done, subversive take on several socio-political issues of the time, and packed in enough references to appeal to an older audience as well. It ran for 65 episodes over 6 seasons, initially on ABC, but eventually in syndication. It also received an impressive 4 movies, with 3 of them being released direct-to-video and 1 theatrically, which doubled its budget at the box office. Lastly in this category is the first and only anime of the year with Tenchi Universe. This series came to us on the Sci-Fi Channel following their showing of Tenchi the movie the previous year during their Saturday anime block. The show is about a normal Japanese teenager who one day rescues and takes in an alien pirate named Ryoko, and eventually the pirate's princess rival who has come looking for her. Over the course of the series, the roster expands to a full-on harem, as many anime of this sort tend to do, and is filled with typical antics and misunderstandings that such a series brings with it. They all end up going into space and getting caught up in a war. It's a series with a lot of moving parts. You should probably just check it out for yourselves. As a lot of the other categories this year have, we get another one that comes in just a pair of shows, both of which actually came from children's books. The first was a series born in the UK and imported here for addition to the Nick Jr. lineup. It's called Kipper and is based on the Kipper the Dog series of children's books from Mick Inkpen. The show's about a small dog and his animal friends and their small-scale everyday adventures, and receives 78 10-minute episodes over a 3-year run. As with most preschool shows, I'm not really going to say much else about it. The other one in this category, though, actually appeals to an older audience as well, with it even being one of my favorite shows that my own kids watched. The Mr. Men Show is an American remake of the 1995 British series Mr. Men and Little Miss, based on the 70s book series by Roger Hargreaves. This was a 39-episode syndicated show that was comprised of small lesson-teaching segments featuring characters from the very large cast of the Mr. Men's and Little Misses'. It was quite often really funny, and the portrayals of the various characters were generally great. So this is one I can recommend for pretty much any age. Well, I'd had every intention of fitting this entire year into a single video, but by the time I was done recording just the raw audio, I was well over 50 minutes already. That being the case, I decided to go ahead and split it up into 2 parts. So we'll end this one here for now, and I'll have the other one done this weekend. Also, between now and then, you can expect to see a deep dive on Visionaries and the second part of the animated 80s in film. Hopefully. Also, one thing I just wanted to mention is I put a link to my personal website for my writing on the channel's homepage, and I'll add one in the video description as well. If you're at all interested, you can go over there and check out some writing samples of different projects I've been working on. By the time you're watching this video, though, I'll already be working on the deep dive and should probably, hopefully, maybe, have it out tomorrow. So, thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and stay tuned, as in cartoons. Later.